Welcome to ProEquo. In our first video, the €1,000,000 coup, we had already shown how the footing in trot has changed. In our video dressage competition Top or Flop, we used the example of Isabel Wert to illustrate how the movements of horses has changed over the past 30 years and how their downward posture has been increased. Now we want to take a look at the trotting steps of Charlotte Dujardin's horses.
After her surprise victory at the London 2012 Olympic Games, the previously internationally little-known Charlotte Dujardin was highly praised by horse magazines. She was celebrated as a rider whose style heralded a move away from Rollkur and circus movements and a return to classical riding in dressage. But what about the trotting movements of her horses when you take a closer look? Here is an example of Allegro in London 2012 from the freestyle. Allegro showed an alteration in the pattern of movement at the trot. Already at the Olympic Games in Barcelona 1992, Dr. Clayton noticed this change in all those dressage horses that were later placed in the top ranks. Dr. Clayton then investigated the distribution of forces at the footing both in the natural foot sequence, diagonal and simultaneous, and in the altered foot sequence with the hind leg coming down first. It's not surprising that the measurements showed that the rear leg takes more weight. Dr. Clayton has since stated the opinion that this is a positive change in the movement pattern. After all, in dressage, the hindquarters are supposed to take more weight. But does this theory stand up to scrutiny and practice? Let's take another close look at Allegro in London. He by no means only comes down with the hind leg first. Sometimes the front leg alone also must take the entire load of the body. 4 years and quite a few dressage competitions later, on the occasion of the 2016 Olympic freestyle in Rio, we can see quite clearly when the movement pattern changes that what we once considered positive aspects can also turn into a negative variant. Over thousands of years, the stable movement pattern of the trot has proven itself. This is what the natural sequence in trot looks like. Coming up with a diagonal pair of legs at the same time makes the trot an extremely efficient and energy-saving locomotion. Horses can cover long distances in this way, both in the wild and under the rider, without much fatigue. The speed at which horses normally trot is called the working pace, a pace that's neither hurried and frantic nor restrained and sluggish. Due to the constant push from the hindquarters, which has been increased by breeding over decades, today's horses go more and more downhill because the push brings them more onto the forehand. Most horses now land on one leg of the forehand. This increases the negative effects of the downward posture. Let's now look at Charlotte Dujardin with her youngster Gio. If you look closely, we can see that Gio, like most of the today's horses, sometimes lands first in the back and more often first in the front. Often these horses are first at the back at the beginning of the competition and more at the front towards the end. This is a sign that these international top dressage riders do not collect their horses at all. They do not shift the center of gravity towards the hindquarters through their training. Instead, lessons are practiced in a constant downward posture that increases with every spectacular extended trot. Finally, it must be made clear, all the top-scoring horses showed this alteration in the movement pattern in 1992. On the one hand, this is the result of the selection of spectacular movements that has been going on since the 70s. On the other hand, at that time, there were still enough horses with normal, simultaneous, diagonal footing. This proves that the one-legged trot, which even young unridden horses show today, is a result of breeding changes and was not always present. Examples from earlier times of ridden horses are more likely to be due to deficiencies in training. Decades of incorrect breeding selection have been fueled by scientific research. Idealizing conclusions were drawn from the results. Charlotte Dujardin and Gio show once again in Tokyo how a natural, stable two-beat movement in which the load is distributed over the evenly moving diagonal pair of legs has turned into a confused sequence of feet without a clear two-beat with different loads of individual legs at a motoric model. Abandoning the breeding selection for spectacular movements and returning to harmonious ease with a natural, diagonal and simultaneous foot sequence would contribute a lot to keeping our horses healthy.